Welcome, everybody. My name is Gary Craig, and I'm here with Diana Caudle. Say hello, Diana. Diana?
Hello.
Okay. The reason we're here is I recently put out an open letter to the Faster EFT community that was published on Diana's blog. And there's been some questions about that, etc. So we're here to expand upon that and so on. One thing I want to make clear, because I guess there's been a question about this, is that Diana didn't contact me in any of this. Rather, I contacted her. I had gotten in all kinds of responses from people in the Faster EFT community about things that were going on that, maybe I should know about. And so I got concerned. I knew Diana was having a blog on these issues. So she and I started talking, but I initiated everything, just so you know, there was some confusion about that. She didn't initiate it, I did, okay? So, if I got that right, do I not, Diana?
Yes, thanks for clearing that up, Gary.
Okay. Now, what I thought I might do, because not everybody listening here has even seen the open letter, I thought I'd just give you a couple of highlights about it, and then Diana's going to ask me a bunch of questions, and we're going to have a conversation, and hopefully this will clear up any misunderstandings anybody might have. First of all, the headline on this open letter is, please change the misleading Faster EFT name. It is not Faster, nor is it EFT. And the essence of the letter is that the use of the Faster EFT name to draw people into the Faster EFT community is deceitful, because when somebody gets there, they're not learning EFT, and they're learning this much of it, and the little bit that they are learning is inaccurate. I'll put it that way. Okay, I was going to say perverted, but I'm going to say inaccurate. Okay, so I wanted to make that point clear to everybody, and so the letter really talked about things like clearing up things like, apparently people have the impression that Robert Smith and I have, we're chums or something. We've had a long ongoing relationship, and that isn't true. I've only had 32 minutes of discussions with him over time. So I make that point in here. I also talk about Faster EFT is not Faster, nor is it EFT. I give some examples of that, and we'll probably expand on that here some. And then I asked a number of questions of the Faster EFT community, like, what can you do with Faster EFT that you can't do with regular EFT? That's what the authentic use of EFT. And how is the Faster EFT name, the use of that with Faster EFT, ethically justifiable, since it's not EFT and it's not Faster? Okay, so anyway, that was the essence of all that. And I think, Diana, you had some questions, so let's just start. We'll have a discussion and see where this goes.
Yeah, my first question is actually, what was the response from the Faster EFT community to your open letter? Did you receive any communication from people?
Actually, I was expecting people to write to me and tell me how Faster EFT was actually faster, or that it was EFT and any of that. But I got one response. I mean, I was expecting a whole bunch of them, but I got one response, and the one response didn't even address the questions. They were basically upset, that thought I was out of bounds for even writing a letter like this and so on. But that was it. I got zero response, so nobody could tell me how Faster EFT was indeed faster, or even that it was EFT, or the name was justifiable. Nobody could do that. So, I mean, that was, to me, sort of telling by itself, but that's what happened.
Interesting. Okay, thanks. I guess my other question would be really to highlight again, what are your biggest concerns? Just to let people know. I know you mentioned stuff in your letter, but in this forum, if you could really talk about your biggest concerns at this point with Faster EFT.
Well, my biggest concern is already on the table here, and that's it. It's the inappropriate use of a name to draw people into something, to make them think they're getting EFT, the very well-known brand name that I've, spent 20 years developing, and, 30,000 hours of my time, and frankly, $2 million to put it up in the revised way that it is now on our website and everything else. To use that brand name to go sell something else And in the process, as it turns out, I mean, I'm finding out now that EFT is actually belittled in all of this. You know, it's built up in some cases, but then belittled in other cases, and very confusing. So I just want to make sure that we have stuff on the table that needs to be there.
And when you're saying belittled, are you speaking specifically by the faster EFT community?
Well, there's two pieces to that. One is some of the things that are said by its promoter, and others is the. Well, let me give you an example. Yesterday, I was talking to a faster EFT practitioner who had a recorded session of faster EFT vignette she did with some client, and I was asked to look at that, and so I called her out of courtesy, etc. But the use of the tapping that was going on there was very, how am I going to say this? If the skillful use of EFT is equivalent to a PhD, let's say, this was grammar school. I mean, it was really poor. The client ended up getting traumatized and so on. So in her defense, she thought she was doing this really well, and she emphasized to me repeatedly in our conversation that she didn't really know what EFT was. I mean, she had heard of me, she had heard of our website and this kind of thing, but she really didn't know what, all she knew was what faster EFT tapping was. And that's all she was doing. And she was doing what she knew she could do. But to me, that's belittling the process, because that's, however she got taught that is so underneath what she could really be doing with this, that it's, to me, that's belittling.
Thank you for clarifying that. I want to actually add something.
Sure.
That I do believe that, just for people who don't know, that there was a recording on the blog around Marilyn's recording that people can go check out if they don't know what we're talking about. But that my view here is that these are really well-meaning people, that these practitioners genuinely think that they are helping people.
Yeah.
And that's been a bit of the concerning part, is that they're not able to see what many others can see, is that there's actually harm going on. And so I really want to emphasize, though, that I truly think most of these practitioners are extremely well-meaning. Many of them used to be very close friends of mine. These are really good people. That's what's happening, though, is somehow these issues aren't being addressed as they're being brought up, and it's been turned into, how do I put it, a deflection of what's going on. And that's actually how this has snowballed to this entire series being written, because that was not the original intention. The original intention was to have these safety and ethical concerns addressed, which I actually started addressing 2.5 years ago, or longer before that, when I was still within the organization and a core part of that system. And so it's only come to this point based on the alarming things that were coming to light, the many, many phone calls and emails I started receiving after my initial blog that was simply to explain why I left Faster EFT, because a lot of people asked me that. And I had gotten tired of answering it one-on-one, and I said, look, I'm going to write a blog, you can go read this, and this is my response. And so it was actually only in finding out the response of, okay, here's these issues, and watching how many of the practitioners and then the founder himself didn't, again, take this seriously. It was more of, let's just blame me, and deflect. And so that's when I realized this is actually a really serious issue. And so again, while these people, in many cases, are really kind and well-meaning, this has been an issue. So I just highlight that for those that are viewing, and to the practitioners as well, to let them know kind of my intentions in bringing this to light.
Well, to go along with that, and that was a good point, Diana, thank you. But I know I'm the founder of this, and I've been around this over 20 years, and I know a lot of people in the EFT community. I mean, I've got lots of them, very good friends and so on, you know. And what I did, out of curiosity, was I went to the Faster EFT website, and I looked through the list of all the practitioners, and I can't say I saw every one of them, but I saw a couple of hundred anyway. Okay, of those practitioners. I'm gonna make sure I'm clear there. I probably saw 100 to 150. That's my best estimate, okay? And I didn't recognize any name on there of all these practitioners, of anybody that I ever knew, except for one person. And the one person, very nice person, etc., but you know, has her fingers in every pie she can imagine, and I do not consider her a good student in EFT. But the point is, all of the people that I know out there that have had solid training in this, etc., don't end up on this. Now, let me talk about that for a minute. The way I see it now is that what people do is they see this name, Faster EFT. They learn about EFT someplace, and it's got a good name. And well, gee, I'd like to learn about EFT, so they go on the internet or something. Oh, here's Faster EFT. Well, why would I learn EFT if I could learn Faster EFT? So they go, it's a clever name. It's just deceitful, that's all. So they're going to go over here, and they think they're learning EFT, but they soon get in there and they start learning, well, no, EFT, no, that's not so much. We're doing another thing over here. And it's better than EFT, and it's faster than EFT, and neither of those is true. But that's how it's occurred, and so people go in there and they never understand or even get exposed to the original, authentic EFT that is so elegantly designed, if I do say so myself, okay? So anyway, you had another question.
Well, yeah, you had 2 points, actually, about what we were talking about before, and I'm trying to remember where we were about your biggest concerns, and we started talking about that recording with that practitioner, and I was talking about how they were really well-meaning. You had another point you wanted to make about that. Do you recall what that was?
I don't. I'm sorry, but I'm sure it's going to crop up as we have this discussion.
That sounds good. So my next question would actually be, do you feel that Faster EFT is an innovation of EFT? Essentially, Robert claims that he went and made it better, that you told people, go make EFT better, and he claims they did. Gary told me to, and I did. So I'm curious, do you see EFT, or Faster EFT for that matter, as an innovation of EFT?
Not at this point, but let me be really clear here on something. I have, since the beginning of EFT, over 20 years ago, I have been looking for innovations. I have been looking for improvements to it. And gradually we have been improving it over time as we learn new things and so on. And we've got a very, very delightful set of tools. It's very simple. It's very elegant. It's very precise. You get surgical precision in it. It's very gentle. We've really done a lot of things with it. Okay. But I'm always open to new innovations. I have, for the public, and this was in my letter as well, a $25,000 reward for anybody who can bring to me an innovation that truly improves EFT. Now, Robert Smith or anybody from the Faster EFT community has never taken advantage of this. It's a simple matter. The link was given on this to that facility, that ability, you know, in the blog article, the open letter that I put out. You just simply go there. What it's going to ask you to do, though, is to compare what innovation you have, what new great thing that you think would improve EFT. But you have to compare it to the skillful use of EFT that's already out there. You can't say, I want to compare this to this, but what you do is compare this to a smaller little version of this. You've got to compare it to the real thing, which means you will need to learn the skillful use of EFT. Now, people have tried that in the past. They have their ideas. They go to learn skillful use of EFT, and they find, oh, the idea is already covered, or my idea is not as good as what's already there, and so on. Now, if Faster EFT really does have something like that, I will pay $25,000, and as I say on my article, the facility for it, I'll help you promote it. we'll integrate it in and so on. So, I mean, here's a wide open door for anybody to do this, Robert included, and I would love to see that. But I've not seen it so far, and the pieces that I do understand about it, I'm not impressed. But
well, and that actually leads me to another question about Robert Smith's training in EFT. To your knowledge, you've mentioned that he never received training or certification from you. I just wanted you to see if you could speak about that for a moment.
Well, that's true. Yeah, there's no certification from him on us. He never attended any of our in-depth trainings or stuff. I mean, he did attend at least one, maybe two. I think he claims he attended others, but I don't know, of these demonstration workshops that I did years ago where 200, 300, 400, 500 people would show up to them. I would bring people up on stage. We would use EFT. People would ask questions and this kind of thing. It was a demonstration type thing. It wasn't what you call training. It's sort of like going to a movie and being able to ask the movie actors questions, okay? But you don't really learn how to, I mean, what was the example I used one time? You can't watch the movie Rocky and conclude that you're a boxer. It takes more to it than that, okay? But he did attend those, one or two of them that I know that I can remember. We had one, as I recall it, 2-minute conversation at one of my breaks, and he wanted to take a bunch of pictures with me, and I forgot what else we may have talked about. I understand he claimed he gave me some DVDs or something, but I don't remember any DVDs, and I have no recollection of any ongoing emails or correspondence or anything like that, but anyway, that's where that is. The other 30 minutes was we want to get to the training. That's the only training that he took. He didn't sign up for anything else with us. Now, I want to give you an example here if I can that might be useful. I was looking at his videos, and as I see the videos, I see him talking about EFT, okay? And he's talking about faster EFT, and he's very enthusiastic, of course, and he likes to talk a lot about his process and all of that. But in the process of that, he's displaying his understanding of EFT, and I want to give you just one example, and it parallels many other things that I saw there. It's the beginning of one of his videos. I bet the number of it down here someplace, but he was saying, okay, let's assume somebody has anger. Okay, that's the issue, is anger. He would say something like, well, the way those EFTers do it is that say, even though I have this anger, and that's as far as he went. And then he would say, but we don't do that. We do all of these things over here, which is much better, et cetera, et cetera. Well, to try to portray, even though I have this anger, as some description of how EFT is done is way off base. I mean, we teach that rather basic kindergarten version in chapter 1 of our tutorial, okay? But the whole rest of it is designed to get behind that and get into the details behind that and what really causes this anger and so on. Robert talks about the mind this and the mind that as though EFT doesn't. Of course, the mind's involved in everything. Your emotions are involved. That's part of your mind, and on it goes. We have our own way of doing it. But Robert wants to rearrange that, and that's fine if Robert wants to do that. Great. I'm all for everybody putting out their stuff and letting the world know what it is and so on, but use your own name for it. I mean, it's a whole mix of different things, so call it Robert's Mixed Therapy, RMT, or something like that, but don't take the name EFT and use it to entice people into something that is not EFT. I mean, that's the point. So anyway, from his training, it's minimal. I can see no evidence any place that it's anything other than minimal. So.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that, because I think that's been a question on a lot of people's minds, because he, from what I've heard, has claimed to have training pretty extensively with you. So fair enough, he may have had other training. I don't know about that if he did. He did. But it sounds like in that training, what I've heard you say is he's maybe at 30%. Am I quoting you correctly? Like at the third rung of the ladder of excellence as far as where he's then sort of expanded out. Would that be a fair assessment of what you said?
Well, yeah, that's actually what I said in my open letter, was about 30% of, you know, what a really skilled EFTer would be. I'm not sure it's that high, frankly, as I think about it and see some of the other things. But anyway, the point is it's very low. Okay. It's very low. In a way that sounds very critical, but I do want to point out, in Robert's defense, that's what a lot of people do. They learn some of the basics of it, go, oh, wow, look at that. But they've just learned this much of it. And what they tend to do is, instead of climbing up our ladder of excellence, they will tend to go out. They will tend to, well, I'm read somebody else's book, or somebody's got a DVD on this, or attend somebody's website, or et cetera. And so people get their advanced education by going out from rung 3 or 2 or 4 or whatever it is of the EFT, the 10-rung ladder of ladder of excellence. And they put all these gerrymandered things together instead of going up the ladder. If you go up the ladder, you learn a lot of things. And you look down on this, I sometimes call it merry-go-round to mediocrity, and you look down at that. But that is what Robert does, and that's what a lot of people conclude is really good training. But it isn't. It isn't. It's just, it's beginner stuff, and then you go off and talk to other beginners, and you develop what you think is a process that is somehow or other more effective than the higher rungs of our ladder. So
thank you for clarifying. And I think part of what's confusing is Robert says in our video that EFTs, or fast EFT, is only 5% EFT. I believe I'm quoting that correctly. So it's very confusing for the general public, because the name so clearly represents itself as being EFT only faster, and then he also says it's not. So I think that's part of what it's important for people to know, that there is a lot of confusion around this.
Well, let me add to that confusing comment, if I may. Yes, in one of his videos, he does say it's only 5%, but he goes on to say that it has been, what's the right term, so changed, so EFT has been so changed that it's not even recognizable anymore. And so why use a name like faster EFT to bring people in the door when you're teaching something that is not even 5%, and what that little 5% is unrecognizable? That's the deceit involved. And I really don't want the EFT brand name, you know, involved in all of that. I think it's unfair. I think it's unfair to the practitioners to keep calling it faster EFT when the public is going to learn that where the deceit is. It's not EFT and it's not faster. So why use a deceitful name? Why not use an honest name, and then we can all go about our business, you know, and you can do your thing and just call it an honest name, you know, instead of trying to hide behind something the public is going to understand is questionable.
Sure. Well, you brought up the phone call. I want to go back to that, actually. Robert claims to have a recording of your phone call, that if he were to release, that it would paint you in a bad light. He said something to that effect on social media. And I'm wondering if you're aware of that recording, that he was recording you at the time, and also if you could please share your recollection of that conversation.
Well, I read what he said, and he didn't say recording. He said he had a transcript of it. Okay. And the answer is, to your question about the recording of it, I had no idea he was recording it. I was stunned that somebody would simply record something like that and not tell you. I mean, there's 2 levels of it. I was a little unhappy about this, so I looked up some legal things and all of that. Turns out in the state of Oklahoma, I guess it's legal to go ahead and record that. However, I live in California, where it's absolutely illegal to record that. And if I remember it correctly, and I'm not playing lawyer here, and I could be a little wrong on this one, that's a criminal offense and punishable by imprisonment, okay? And he's crossing state lines with that. Now, I don't know. I'm not pointing legal fingers. I'm not going to go report him or anything like that. But what I'm saying is there's very questionable legal parts about that, but I am more concerned with the ethics of that. If you're going to record somebody, let them know. Don't just start recording stuff and then someday later say, oh, I've got a recording. You know, I mean, that's just inappropriate. Now, I have no problem whatsoever with that recording being out for anybody, anywhere to hear. I have no problem whatsoever. I would encourage it, as a matter of fact. However, I don't have that recording. Apparently, Robert does. I don't want that recording out underneath Robert because I do not trust how he may edit it. If he's got a transcript, how easy is that to change words, etc. I want that recording sent to me. I'm sure Robert's watching this. So, Robert, I want this sent to me, please, so I can look at it and make sure it has not been edited, changed, in all of that, like EFT has been edited and changed, okay? I want to make sure it's the original, and then we can put it out if you want to, okay? So, anyway, that's that point.
Okay.
Got a little hot under the collar there. Sorry, but sometimes I get a little worked up. You know?
I appreciate your passion, Gary.
Okay.
A good cause. So let me ask you this. We've touched on the Google Hangout call with Marilyn, and I believe you're aware of the incident that happened with the Crossfire blog, the article around the flashlight being shoved in someone's mouth. Just to remind you and those who may not have seen it, there were things, I don't know that I even want to repeat on this call, that were said that were pretty vulgar. And as the flashlight was shoved in this woman's mouth, and she had two people tapping on her at once, and this was a session she actually then was expected to pay for afterwards, and she was highly, highly traumatized. Nobody in the session seemed to realize she was in complete freeze and dissociation mode. So I'm wondering if you can comment on how EFT works with trauma, and also your thoughts on what you heard about that session, if that's something essentially, you know, I know there are people that use provocative tools, and I'm not in any way criticizing provocative therapy done properly or by skilled people that are trained well. So I think that they're, especially with NLP, right, when these things are done well, they're wonderful tools, but in the hands of people that might not have the proper skill, to me, they can go horribly wrong. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yes, and I have thoughts on that. I've got to preface this by saying I wasn't really there in this. I have heard accounts of it. I have had people writing to me about it, you know, and so on. And I'm going to use the vulgar part of it, just so, because we're all adults here, just so people really understand what's happened, and then I'll give you my response to all of this. The idea was there's this crossfire process. More than one therapist is involved.
Let me reframe. They are not therapists. These are not licensed individuals.
Okay. More than one practitioner is
go.
involved. Okay. All right. There was, if I understand it correctly, and you can correct me on this because you know more about this than I do, Diana, there was some suspected sexual abuse in this lady's past. In the process of trying to elicit or do something with this supposed sexual abuse, they took a flashlight, shoved it down her mouth, and said, "Feel my hairy dick." Do I have that right?
I can fact check for you in a minute, but that's very close, yes.
Okay.
Or the exact language, and definitely don't puke, you know you're going to puke, things like that.
No, I didn't hear that part of it.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that part. But anyway, that to me, I'm going to get a little passionate here, so excuse me, but I'm going to have to choose my words and be as kind as I can, okay? The word that comes up for me is dangerous. I mean, I've had lots of experience with people that have been heavily traumatized. I have dealt with war veterans, you know, with the most extreme examples of PTSD. I have dealt with satanic abuse survivors which have multiple personalities. One of them, I remember, had 200 different personalities, etc. And I've also dealt with people who were badly traumatized and didn't even know it because they had repressed stuff. And it started coming up in conversation in EFT, and then we have ways to bring them down. But to try this flashlight thing or something like that with somebody traumatized like that, that's the kind of thing that can tip somebody over into suicide. It can tip somebody over into homicide. And that's the kind of thing, you know, as soon as that happens and somebody really gets on the faster EFT community for this kind of atrocity, you're going to get lawyers all over this case. You're going to get federal authorities all over this case. It's going to spread all over the faster EFT community. And one of my concerns is it'll start spreading over the EFT community, which would really be a shame because we have nothing to do with this extreme prevarication of our process. Okay, so big dangers in there. Now, you asked me what I might do. I think you asked me what I might do, did you not?
Yes.
Okay. Whenever the EFT process, if I even suspicion somebody's really got heavy trauma going on, either because of what they tell me, what I'm picking up from them just from their body cues, or what comes up in session, we have a number of tools that are designed to take the edge off, to be humane, to be soft in doing this, to gradually get into this process. We call it taking the edge off, okay? And it's very purposefully done. We don't aim right at the centerpiece of this thing to begin with. That is terribly inhumane. We keep doing it. I have a lot of skills in this. I've taken war veterans who at the mere thought of one of their traumatic memories, you know, their eyes go back in their head, they start to dissociate and all of this. And so I start using EFT in a gentle way, you know, even though even though the world doesn't always work like I'd want it to. See how global and general that is? And then I get more specific, and all the time I'm watching them, and they're calmer, and they're calmer. And I get closer and closer to the bullseye, if you will. They're calmer and calmer, and then we can get into this. They can then start recalling it. They then have ease on this. They have freedom from it. They can talk about it like it was a walk around the park. And so, I mean, that's what we do. We design that for that. I even have a thing that I've said for years on our website, etc., is don't go where you don't belong. There are a lot of people who use these processes and go, wow, wow, and they have no credentials whatsoever. And they go off and try to do magic with them in places that they really shouldn't be, you know, and they do that. And so that's why I talk about all of that. So anyway, that's me.
Gary, it's really interesting hearing you say this because literally Faster EFT says we go where no one else goes. That's a estimation. That's maybe not quoting them exactly, but very close, is this idea that we go where no one else is going to go, and that we go to the worst of the worst. So when I was training, we were taught to go to the worst of the worst trauma, blow it up with dynamite, and the idea was to actually aim. That's what, in the art of change, it's aim, release, and transform. And so actually it's all about aiming in at the beginning and really blowing it up. And the idea that I used to say was, well, sometimes there's shrapnel from that, and that can actually be really damaging. And you don't know when you're blowing something up what else that's going to affect. And I say this from the view of a licensed therapist who's had many years in training in trauma, not just as a layperson who only went to Faster EFT. So these were things that were concerning to me at the time, and I've since clearly left and don't use that at all anymore. But it sounds very opposite to what you're saying here. Approach.
Yeah, absolutely, it's opposite. Yeah. We also aim, I mean, I want to get down to all the nitty-gritty and all the detailed parts of this, and I want to treat this thing thoroughly, but I'm not just going to hit somebody over the head with a sledgehammer to begin with. I'm going to gradually get into it. I had so much experience with this, but once we gradually, take these layers away and finally get down to the real core, they're much softer. And then we can get down to how these things smelled and how they how they tasted, what these sounds were, and what some dying comrade's voice was like, and all these other little details. We get to them, but humanely, to hit them over the head to begin with. I'm sure people get results there someplace. Okay, apparently it has its work somewhere, but boy, let me tell you, that is not EFT, and one reason I don't want the name EFT anywhere close to something like that.
Understood and agreed.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
And I actually found the quote, so basically, here we go. Before I knew it, my mouth was being pried open, a flashlight was being inserted as if it were a penis, and I heard them shouting things like, you know you want that hairy dick, and you're going to puke, don't puke.
Oh.
So people can go read the full article, but those are the things that were said. Yeah. So my other question is...
Well, yeah, I'm going to comment on that again if I can.
Okay, sure.
In fact, I shouldn't even call it the Faster EFT community, because I don't like the name. I'm going to call it instead the Robert Smith community. Okay. If the Robert Smith community wants to do that kind of thing, God bless you. Go do it, and I hope you heal the world. But don't call it EFT, please. God, what a prevarication of the process. I mean, that's embarrassing. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. I was going to bring up another blog that we had discussed, since you've clearly read my series, and this was the one about Solomon, the one who had the testimonial that he requested to be taken down and then was mocked, and not only was the testimonial not removed when he felt that he went home and essentially that the changes weren't lasting, he had been talked into doing a testimonial right at the end of this training he was at, so there was really no time to see if it was a lasting change. And when he requested it be taken down, not only was it not removed, but he was then, Robert made videos about him that mocked him, and that he actually named it the Solomon syndrome or phenomenon. I'm not sure which one it was. And there were several videos, and he has teaching points on this that he brings up in the class as a way to really publicly humiliate and shame this person and bully him. And so we had discussed that, and I'm wondering if you care to comment on that as well, as far as, I mean, there's so many areas here that are questionable, but.
Well, I don't know that yes, I did read of, I didn't read it in great detail, that particular article. I do know some of the highlights like you just discussed. So I really can't make my most insightful comments. I don't know all the details. However, within the EFT community, if somebody's having some kind of difficulty like that, we let the world, I mean, there's no restriction on that being discussed in our webinars, you know, on our website, wherever. People email with these stuff, and we're very open on that, and we want to find out if someone's having a problem someplace. Where are you having your problem, and what can we do to take care of it? Now, interestingly enough, I do get letters from time to time from people that really have tried, I'm going to put quotes on this, tried EFT, used EFT, and they ended up with some kind of problem which they describe, and it's, you know, it's really, you know, I wouldn't want to have to be in the position they're in, okay? When I call them and discuss this with them, what I'm finding is the EFT that they were using wasn't our EFT. It was somebody else's version. And so they were this lighter rung 3 version, if you will, that really didn't have the skills to take somebody who really is badly compromised and be able to use EFT skillfully. They just got so far, didn't know what to do. Person got traumatized and had problems, etc. So I really can't, I mean, the way you describe the soul man thing, that's something that would never happen on our website, but I don't know enough about it really to dig into any more detail than I have.
Sure. So it sounds like, tell me if this would be a correct statement, if someone had given you a testimonial and later said, you know, Gary, actually my results weren't lasting, could you please take that down, that you would absolutely comply, and not only that, but you would actually ask them, what was wrong, how can we make this better? Is it, am I?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, sure. Doesn't happen very often, but when it does, sure, of course.
Wonderful. I think that's important for people to know, because I myself feel the same way, that if someone were to contact me around a testimonial that changed, I would want to know what had changed, and I would be happy to take it down, because I don't want to be misrepresenting things. And again, if people don't contact you, you don't know, and I get that in all fairness. And I think it is important, if people are going to be doing testimonials right after a seminar, to have some follow-up. I think that makes it less misleading. It makes it more honest and more of an accurate representation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, great. We've also talked about, and I'd love to hear you address this idea of Fast EFT has the reframe, and it's the re-imprint, and it's the flipping of memories. And the idea being, you know, Robert tells a story of how he was bullied and chased up into a tree. This is the example he gives of his own memory at seminars, and how he saw his stepdad come home, or his father, whatever it was, and he thought, oh good, I can crawl out of the tree. I'm paraphrasing, and dad will protect me. And sure enough, his dad didn't protect him. He beat him with a hammer. And so Robert tapped on this, and essentially he got rid of all the emotion, and then he flipped the memory to where this no longer happened. The new memory was him and his dad went fishing, and he caught the bigger fish, something to that extent. So the idea is, rather than simply make peace with it, he also changed the memory. And I'm just curious, I'm not even passing judgment on it. It's more of, is that something that is done in EFT?
No, not really. I'm well aware of the re-imprinting idea. I mean, I've studied it some myself, and I have books written, read books written on it, and so on. This whole idea of taking some other memory and replacing it with a bad memory, you know, has a nice therapeutic, positive type ring to it. Gee, why wouldn't we do that? You know, and so fine. And people who want to do that, fine, they can go do that. We don't do it in EFT, and it's an important distinction, and I want to tell you why. This is another reason why faster EFT is not EFT, because we just don't do that. Okay, but here's why. I personally had an exquisite spiritual experience in 1988, where it was something like one of these near-death experiences, where I was in the presence of the Creator, and there was nothing there but love, and there was nothing like this experience here, you know, in this world of separate bodies, etc. And I came away from that with several things, but among the things I came away with was that really is our true reality. We've covered it over with all kinds of other stuff, emotional debris, we may want to call it, the kind of things that EFT can systematically move out of the system, okay? But the idea is our foundation, our birthright. Who we really are is this loving, loving nature covered over by stuff. So what EFT does is, with surgical precision, take these debris, these covering things, and remove them bit by bit, piece by piece, and so on, so that the more natural foundation, the more loving, the more joyous you can show up. Now, if you thwart that process by, you know, getting rid of some of the debris, if you will, but then somehow or other impose another kind of memory on it, while it sounds like something maybe you want to do, no, because that's just in the way of the more joyous stuff rising to the top. So we, excuse me, we don't do any of that. Never have. I can't imagine why we would. That doesn't mean that adding some imprint in isn't helpful for some people. Some people say so. Yes, 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 yes. Great, great. I don't do it for the reasons I mentioned. Okay. I think it's less efficient.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. And I know that there's other processes that do it. And from what I've heard, it's in a very loving and honoring way, and it allows the client to actually change what happened. And so that's something that I think when done well is an option for people. I think where I've had some concerns is when there's making it up by the practitioner, and I think that's part of what we were seeing in that audio recording. Again, from a very well-meaning woman, I heard a lot of her things. At about 7 minutes in, she has the woman go to her peaceful anchor, which I'm very much for. I think this is a wonderful thing to have. I use a heart relax anchor, and the idea is to get people into a place where they feel really safe. And yet, this is where it shows that you really have to have a solid sense of what you're doing and how to work with clients, because what I heard happening was her own verbiage was being the practitioners inserted into this memory, and that was concerning for me. And that may or may not be to other people, but that was a detail that wasn't lost on me, where I thought, it's really important to be able to put the client in charge, and that we act as a guide and a facilitator rather than pushing our own agenda.
Well, yeah, and this is a kind of a small point, Diana, but I just want to complete it with this. Yeah. In my view, the client's idea of what a new memory would be is probably better than the idea of what the practitioner's model might be. But even that's the client trying to second guess the true spiritual nature of it. And I don't know that the client is any better, and it's probably not quite as good as the actual spiritual nature. So leave it be and just let it bubble up. We've had just marvelous reaction or experiences with all of that. So anyway, small point on a small detail. So
I actually appreciate that, because it sounds like what you're saying is then the natural thing can come up. And I do believe that actually Faster EFT, when I learned it, did honor that as well, that it wasn't that you were always making it up, that there was an organic flip that could happen. So I think that that's a piece of it. I think that where we get into a sticky situation is when you have things like, we'll make it up, and that's what happened in the Crossfire article, and that's what happened in this audio. I don't know. Well, then make it up what happened. And then you have the person making something up, sometimes the practitioner. I didn't hear that in the audio. It sounded more like she was asking the client to make it up. But I know that that was inserted in the flashlight incident.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Let me make a comment here, because within EFT, we have a process which I call make it up. It's different than this, however, and some people will learn some of our stuff and they'll put it through their own belief systems, and it comes out differently. Okay, but what we're talking about, where make it up comes here, is we are very much into the specific events in one's life, which is the ultimate cause of our larger issues, our rejections, I'm not lovable, and so on, even our physical diseases, our cancers, our multiple sclerosis, and on it goes, okay? So we're very much into that, but some people can't remember their specific events, oftentimes because they've actually repressed them for their own safety, okay? So what I will do in a case like that, and I'm there with the client, okay, and I have all my skills in the background, so I'm watching what's going on, but I actually have them make one up, make an event up, which may seem fictitious, but it's still coming out of them. And they'll start making up something that fictionally happened, but it's still got pieces of their own stuff in there. And so we'll start dealing with that, and little by little we start seeing changes going on, and then real memories start coming up, and now we're there so we can handle them in the gentle way I talked about before, and so on. So making it up is a way to gently and easily schmooze into repressed memories, but not shoving a flashlight down somebody's throat. Okay, that just doesn't work. I'm sorry, but go ahead.
Sure, and I think the other piece to that is inserting your own suggestions around, the hairy dick and things like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Those are things that I guess were extrapolated perhaps from some of the story, but according to this woman who I spoke with, they definitely went off script and started making their own stuff up, and that's where it's troubling. And I don't believe that's the way it's actually taught in the training, although I haven't been to training in a few years, so I can't speak to what's taught now. Although what I can say is that when I was last at training, it sounds like what's shifted is things have gotten much more like the Wild West. So that's been one of the comments that people are making. Well, Diana Cottle doesn't know what she's talking about because she hasn't been to training since 2013. And I will say that from what I hear, it's actually gotten a lot more rogue than it was when I was there. And I know when I was there, there were definitely concerns and ethical and safety issues. So I can only speak to what I can speak to from my personal experience there.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Great. Well, is there anything else? They've pretty much covered a lot of the questions that I had, and it'll be interesting to see what comments we get below this from viewers, and perhaps there will be a follow-up interview to answer some more of those. But for now, is there anything that you want to add, Gary?
Well, one thing comes up, and this probably should have been covered way up front, but that's the whole idea of faster EFT being faster than EFT. Okay.
Sure.
And I do want to comment on that. First of all, it's not EFT. I hope we've covered that well. Okay.
I think we have.
But even if it was EFT, or enough of EFT to even remotely sort of semi-call it EFT with even this little bit of ethics, okay, even if it was that, it isn't. There is no evidence that it's faster. No evidence whatsoever. The only evidence I can find is Robert says so. And the only thing I saw one of the videos that said the reason it's fast on, I hope I'm saying this right, is that EFT aims at energy stuff, and we aim at the mind, and that's why it's faster. Now, I sort of glossed over that because I don't remember the exact quote. But that being the only thing I can find of any explanation of why it's faster, that's very thin and doesn't fly. Recall, I'm an engineer by background, and if you're going to say something is faster, you need to do something other than just say, wave your hand and say it's faster. You need to tell me how much faster is it. Is it 1% faster? 40% faster? 3 times as fast? I mean, give me some sense of how fast it is. And what you might want to do is say, well, let's just take somebody with asthma, for example. Well, you need to be able to tell me, well, Gary, if you're dealing with somebody with asthma, how long would it take you to do that? Of course, I don't know that. It depends on the case, okay? And then somebody's going to say, well, okay, how long would it take faster EFT or Robert Smith's community to deal with that? And nobody knows that either. So which one is faster? It's this whole silly thing, it's an illusion that is faster. So anyway, that's...
Well, you bring up another question for me. Go ahead, finish.
Well, no, I do have one other thing I want to say. I mean, you can put that question on the table and ask me in a minute, because I'm going to change subject for 1 second. It's my understanding, let me get this out a second. I want to read this for a second. It's my understanding there is now a Robert Smith Facebook page that is called The New Emotional Freedom Techniques and Improved EFT. Now, if somebody's going to have a Facebook page on that topic and both emotional freedom techniques and EFT, I'm the founder of it, I would like to be on that Facebook page. I would like to give my own comments so that people can understand another side of it, if there is one. People can ask questions of me. We can have this free interchange, etc. Now, I could be wrong here. My understanding is this is a very closed group. And even if I get on it, people will, if I say something they think is disagreeable, it'll get kicked out or something like that. But I would like to have the free reign to be on there and just answer whatever questions people have, put out my own ideas, and have full disclosure on this new emotional freedom techniques and improved EFT. And if Robert doesn't want to admit me on there on that purpose, I would hope that other members of that Facebook page, I think there's 13,000 people altogether, so a number of them are bound to be watching this, will ask Robert, well, why not let him on? I'd like to hear what he has to say. It is his thing after all, So anyway, I'm making that request. I hope it is honored.
Great. What I know is that you have to ask to join and be approved by admin, and that as of recently, as in light of everything that surfaced, you actually have to have all posts approved as well. So it's very highly censored, and I also know that any negative comments about Faster EFT are deleted. And well, that's what happens there. So just so I think it's great that you're putting it out here publicly that at this point, if people essentially don't see you commenting there, that they will know it's because you weren't allowed in, or if you were allowed in, that your comments have been deleted or censored, not that you decided to not show up. So I think that's really an important distinction for people to hear and know.
Okay. Well, I can just let you know, and you can put on your blog whatever happens or doesn't happen. If I'm not admitted to it, etc. I mean, I have now applied for it here. They're watching this, obviously. So I have now applied for it, and I'm asking for no censoring, so we have complete disclosure of what's going on. We have free speech. I mean, that's what this country is all about, free speech. So let's practice it. So I'm asking for that. If I'm not put on, I'll let you know. If I am put on and some of my stuff is censored, I'll let you know and I'll tell you what was censored. We'll go from there.
Sure, and it's fair enough, because if the group's going to be called that, it does sound like there should be room for discussion. Where I understand if in the practitioners group or the specific Faster EFT groups, if they want to keep things a little more under their rule, that's okay. I actually do very much respect that there are certain groups that it's okay to keep it pretty focused on topic. And yet, if you're going to name something Faster or not Faster EFT, even though you're running it and you're going to call it what you're calling it here, I think that does show that there would be some need for some balance, especially when it's a forum that is essentially telling people it's EFT even better. So it's yet not just faster, but now it's improved. So here's another false advertising. And if you're not allowed in, that definitely says a lot. So,
okay.
So I would agree with that. The other question that comes to mind is, I don't know if you're aware of this, but in the beginning level 1 trainings, what Robert told us was, and this was after 1 week of being there, some people just 5 days, because not everyone went to the 2-day transformational weekend ahead of time. He would say, you are all more qualified now than a room full of psychotherapists, which I am a licensed psychotherapist. So that was quite an interesting thing to hear. And while I understand his intention with that, saying you now have skills to change the mind in a way that talk therapy doesn't. So I'm not arguing with that piece of it. I think that often in traditional therapy, there's a missing piece to change. That's why many talk therapists, Gary, use traditional EFT. So you have licensed therapists using it. So it's more, though, it's very misleading to say to a room full of people that you're more qualified now than a room full of therapists, because I know for a fact that is not true. I mean, I went through over 3,000 hours of training specifically. So I had probably 5,000+ hours of actual training, years of graduate school. I mean, I've been doing this for a really long time, and I can tell you what you learn in 1 week of Faster EFT, even though this was 2 years ago, is nowhere near putting you in that being more qualified box. So I'm wondering if you could speak to that, because that to me is a very alarming thing to be saying to people who then think that they are just so qualified to help anybody and everybody. And this is where you see people becoming highly traumatized by practitioners who, again, are well-meaning but are being fed, you're the best of the best, you're going to be the next rock stars and superstars in this healing high-rise. And not only are we on the ground floor, but now we're at the top level. So it's really, your stuff's being brought into it, your metaphors. And yeah.
All right, let me comment on that. But first of all, where did you get the phrase healing high-rise?
Well, isn't that something that you created? Because
yeah, that is something I created, but I think within the Robert Smith's community,
yes,
that phrase is used as though it was Robert Smith. I don't know,
he definitely uses it.
Okay.
And
all right.
I don't know if he gives you credit for it or not, but he definitely talks about it.
Yeah, that's a minor point. Now, let me respond to that. In the very early years when I put EFT out, I was very wet behind the ears. I have no training in, formal training in psychotherapy. I've been a student, of personal performance psychology, et cetera, for a long time, et cetera, and I've been moving that direction. But when I started learning what EFT could do, and started comparing it to my understanding of what talk therapy would do, which was my understanding at the time, and that's all a therapist would do, was simply, in my view, in my poorly understood view at that time, was that they would simply talk about things forever, and it would take weeks, months, or years of this and wouldn't get much done, and we could simply go tap, tap, tap in a few minutes or a session or two and get far more done than that tedious talk therapy process could be. That was my view at that time, and I still think there's some accuracy to it. But that doesn't mean somebody who just got out of high school learns tap, 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 or somebody has no training whatsoever here, learns tap, 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 and can get some things done, like somebody's headache goes away and somebody feels better about a bad memory and this kind of thing, that qualifies them as better than all the psychotherapists in the world, you're a star, etc. There's a lot of seasoning I needed to have for myself. It took me a few years to really understand that, and then I started putting reality around that. You know, don't go where you don't belong. We've discussed that before. These things started to come up. I would start to hear people that would start doing things with psychotic people, and I go, whoa, wait a minute, what are you doing? You know, with schizophrenia and stuff like that. The housewife with schizophrenia, you know, or you know, the housewife practitioner, so to speak, helping somebody with schizophrenia, you know, and so on. So I actually had that problem, and I was part of that problem, because I didn't say it in quite this, we were the stars of tomorrow, etc., etc. I was trying to romance the quality of even the basics of EFT compared to what I understood to be the psychotherapeutic process. I have a much different view of it now. It's now reflected differently in the material that I put out. But that's what happens, you know, when you're young or younger, you're new at this, you don't really know the ins and outs of this as well as you will in time. It's a mistake. And so I made it, not to that degree, but I still made it. I'm just not making it anymore.
Well, and I really want to honor and say how much I appreciate you sharing that, and that we're all human. This isn't about people not being able to make mistakes. How I see it as, what do you do when you make a mistake? Do you say, oh my God, I had no idea, how can I make this right? Or do you completely ignore it? And that's actually why this has become such a big issue, and why I've written, I think there's 20 articles now in the Dangers of Faster EFT blog series I'm doing, because there's been a complete silencing, deflection, and no responsibility being taken. And so that, to me, you know, even in this process, I've said along the way, let me clarify my intention and let me really reflect on how I'm showing up in all this, because I'm absolutely human, and it's been an amazing learning process, I think, for everyone involved. And that's something that, when I've been asked what's my desired outcome, I would actually love to see some compassion and empathy from those in what you're calling Robert Smith's community towards the people that have been very abused. The person in the Crossfire blog, the woman on this tape. I'm not even sure that people within that community can see what's wrong about the tape, and that in itself is very concerning. So again, I'm not somebody that is out to get these people. I haven't been involved in this in many years. It's the idea that there are things that are abusive that are happening, and there's absolutely been nothing documented out there except for all these testimonials, many of which are not true, including mine that were out there. I had a video up that had over 10,000 views that was speaking to the chemically sensitive community and was driving all this business towards Robert. And what I would hear from people was that they liked me and my videos so much that they were overriding their own gut instinct that said, there's something about him I'm not resonating with. And he resonates with many people. I will absolutely. This is not a personal attack on him by any means. It's more that if I'm putting out something that then people are swayed, it's very important for me to put out other information, especially when that video, it's not my discretion whether it comes down or not. This was, he put up on his channel, that actually reflects how I feel now. And so I've also owned and said, you know what, I made a huge error and a huge mistake, and lesson learned. And I'm absolutely doing everything in my power to make that right now. I've taken down all the videos I had promoting it, just so I think it's very important for people to know here that I am not looking for perfection. I'm looking for humanness, and I'm looking for people to actually own their actions. So,
well, with that in mind, why don't we close with this? One of the things I'm hoping is that the Robert Smith community will see the inequity of using a faster EFT name for something that isn't faster and isn't even EFT, and will come forward with pressure, if you will, or Robert himself will learn from the mistake of titling it that. Sure. And you guys will just put some other title on there and go about your business without affecting other people that really do know what EFT is. So that's my hope.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Gary. This has been really insightful, and I think it's going to help a lot of people have more clarity into these issues. And I'll just end by saying that if anyone is curious about the blogs, that they don't know about the articles, that they can find them at dangersoffastereft.com.
All right. Thanks so much, Diana.
Thanks, Gary.